Hello, I'm teacher Prix, and I want to help you talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime in English. Another live video. Thanks for joining the live video, and if you are watching the replay, hey, thanks for watching the replay. I hope the suggestions and tips I give today help you improve your English level. So, who is joining? Let me know who you are, your name, where you're from. Hi Carla, how are you? And guys, as it's a live video, I apologize for any noise, any background noise. Unfortunately, it happens. So I really hope that put on your headphones. If any additional background noise happens, I really apologize. Okay, but here we go. Hi, Aimano, Chamara, Jaime, how was your vacation? Tell me all about it. Thiago, how are you? José, Ruti, Shabazz, hello. How are you guys doing? Did you have a good week? Hi, David, thanks for joining. Ciao. Hobison, thanks for joining again. Mohammed, hey. Ray or hey. Adenilson, Gustavo, thank you all for joining me on another video. Ibrahim, thanks from Libya. Cool. I know, Jaime, Rome is wonderful, isn't it? I would love to go back. I love that place. The food, the people, everything about Rome is spectacular. Hashim, hello. Oh, you are from Sudan, but you just moved to Egypt. Okay, that's cool. Very nice. Gilmar had a rainy week. The same here in São Paulo. It was very rainy. I was very worried actually because today was very windy and rainy. I was actually scared. I heard thunders during the day. And when that happens, if it were happening now, I wouldn't be making the live video. I hate thunders and heavy rain, so I would probably be watching Netflix. Oh, thank you. I look great. No makeup. I'm not wearing any makeup. I didn't do my hair. It's all natural today. Very well, guys. So today, I want to talk to you guys about something that many of you wonder. Many of you question this situation. Many of you have this problem, which is to be at the intermediate level, but at the same time you're not making progress and you don't know how to get to a better level. Okay, so I'll be giving you some suggestions. Okay, hello Sarmahad. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I hope it was right. Hi, Henry. Oh, can you hear a helicopter? I can hear, because why not, right? It's Friday night. Hi, Henry from Peru. Thanks, Adelilso. Thanks for joining. So, today's topic, how to escape the intermediate level, right? So, oh, hello, Mirna. Thanks for joining. Hey, guys, everybody say hi to Mirna. It's her first live video. It's the first time she's joining the live video. Anderson, I'm doing great, just peachy. Anyways, many of you who reach intermediate level get stuck at some point, you know? And when we start to study English, we feel great improvements because every day we are learning something. We learn verbs, we learn conjugations, and that makes a big difference when we are speaking or when we are writing. However, as we make progress and we get to an intermediate level, we start to make improvements or to make progress in small proportions. The improvements, they're not so clear anymore. We don't notice those improvements as easily as we used it to when we were basic students. Okay, everything is very small. It's difficult to feel the difference. A big impact, no, that's not what happens at intermediate, okay? That's when we start to feel a little bit strange about our level. I'm at intermediate, I'm not improving, I'm not learning anything. So consequently, we lose motivation. That's the first problem when we reach intermediate level. How many of you consider yourselves at intermediate? Let me know here in the chat. Do you feel you are an intermediate speaker? So let me know here in the chat, okay? Making a question for all my participants. Do you think you are an intermediate speaker? Let me know, okay? Someone is asking me, how do you improve your English? This is a very open and broad question. I will be talking about some things you can do to help you, okay? But there are many things you can do, okay? I could spend all night here telling you guys how to improve your English. That's why I make videos every week, to give you ideas in small bites, okay? So some people are saying, Jaime is still a beginner. What else, people? Come on, let me know. Are you intermediate? Are you still working on that? So when Thiago is saying he is, Jessica also considers herself intermediate. Alex too. Nice, nice. So because at intermediate the improvements are not so big, we start to lose momentum. What's this? We lose, we can't keep track, we can't keep the same pace, okay? And what happens? This influences our learning progress, because we want to have these huge changes and these huge improvements, but when it doesn't happen, we feel bad. And then we start to wonder, is it because of me? Is it because I'm having this problem? Hi guys who are just joining now. Gil, some other people joined too. Imano is saying he thinks he's an intermediate speaker. That's awesome. And at the intermediate, is there a deer? It's oh, it's a moose. Okay, that's a moose. A deer is a little different. I don't know why. Okay, they're different. Okay, deer, moose. Maybe they're from the same family. But yes, it's a moose. I like it so much. All right. Where am I now? In my house. But I think were you asking about the deer, or did I just misread it? Anyways. So as I was saying, at intermediate level, you start to learn more complex subjects. You are learning grammar, complex grammar. And when I say complex grammar, I mean boring grammar. Now, I'm a teacher. Should I be saying that grammar is boring? It's a little, right guys? But it's necessary. So because of all these things, the combination of subjects you are learning, boring grammar, complex, difficult grammar, difficult verbs, phrasal verbs, difficult expressions, the listening exercises you're doing or movies you're watching, they're getting more complicated. Because of that, you feel like you're not improving. You feel like you're not moving forward. And because of this feeling we lose focus. That's like a big problem, because we are an intermediate speaker, but we're having all these new pieces of information that are very complex. You're watching some videos. So many of you send me emails saying that you're watching videos, but they're too complicated. And you hope it's a false move. Yeah, it's a fake one. I would never have a real moves. And because of that, and plus, you can't express your opinions yet. Many students get frustrated because they consider themselves intermediate speakers, but they can't express their opinions yet. It just doesn't happen. Whenever they are having a difficult conversation, a complex conversation, they can't express their opinions. And then you think, well, but I am an intermediate speaker. Shouldn't I be able to talk about difficult things? Not necessarily, okay? José Vicente is saying that he doesn't usually study grammar. Reading and writing, oh, you gotta study that. Reading, grammar, writing, it's all part of the lesson today. I'm gonna talk about these guys, but in a little bit. Now, big question. Can you get from intermediate and reach an upper intermediate, or even become a strong intermediate? Because sometimes the problem is you are intermediate, but you're not a strong intermediate speaker. So is it possible to go from this level, intermediate or low intermediate, to a strong intermediate, or even an advanced speaker? Yes, you can do this. I have several clients who have been studying with me in private classes, and they all made progress from from beginners, from pre-intermediate to intermediate speakers, advanced speakers. But what is the biggest problem? It depends on you. It totally depends on your dedication. And your level of dedication will change when you reach an intermediate level. The way you study will be different from the way you studied when you started. And that's when we have some trouble, because many of you study alone. And this is a challenge. Because you're studying alone, it's difficult to know how to change your studying habits in a way that will help you get out of the intermediate level and improve and become an upper intermediate, a strong intermediate speaker, or an early advanced speaker. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5. Jaime is sharing that when he was on vacation, Jaime was on vacation, he was in Rome. How cool is that? He said he spoke a lot of English. This is awesome. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. So I'm gonna give you 5 suggestions, okay? I'm reading my notes because I don't wanna forget anything important, okay? So I'm gonna give you 5 suggestions of things that pre-intermediate students can do. If you are a very early beginner, these suggestions may not help you so much. So I'm thinking here of pre-intermediate speakers. Pre-intermediate speakers or early intermediate speakers who are not so confident yet. You just got out of the basic stuff. You're getting to know this new world of intermediate level. So these tips are for you, okay, for this level, all right? If you are a very beginner, a very early beginner, watch my beginner's guide. Those videos are for you guys, for beginners. This is not necessarily for a beginner, okay? Like for a very early beginner. Now, one important thing you need to understand before I give the tips, I'm going to talk about them, is, are you really an intermediate speaker? This is a very important question because when I receive an email from a prospect, a client who wants to study with me, I ask about their level. And many of them say, oh, I'm an intermediate speaker. Then when I do a test with them and I ask them questions and I talk to them, they're not really intermediate speakers. They believed they were, but they weren't. So this is something you need to assess. Are you an intermediate speaker? Is this really your level? Because sometimes we misunderstand the concept of an intermediate level and an early intermediate or pre-intermediate. Gilmar is sharing he's not sure if he is an intermediate speaker. So it would be interesting if you did a test. Okay, one suggestion, I don't know where you live, okay, but I imagine there are many English schools, okay, you can go there and do a test, you know, you don't really need to pay for that. At least in Brazil, you can go to any school and you will do a test with the teacher, you will do a written test, you will do an oral test, they will talk about the course and the stuff, and you can check your level, you know, so this is something I would recommend, okay, Resolve Engenharia. So I would suggest going somewhere where you can take a test. Okay, there are online tests, but the online tests, they have no speaking test. For me, honestly, I need to test my students' speaking to know more or less what his level will be. Okay, the written test is important, grammar is important, but at the end of the day, everybody wants to speak. So the test, the level test should be a speaking test, okay? I have had, when I was at Harvard, okay, I studied with a group of like 10 people, and we all did the written test, the listening test. But in my classroom, there were people that could not speak. And we were at the last level, the fluent level. They should be speaking, but they didn't. So that shows that you can know all the grammar in the world. You may have all the vocabulary in the world, but if you can't speak, you are not an advanced speaker. You are not an intermediate speaker. Maybe it would be helpful for you if you use it English just for writing purposes or for reading purposes. But if your goal is to speak, you need to do a speaking test. Okay? So that's so for that I would Oh, okay. Hey, welcome, Teacher Ugu. Thanks for joining. So this is something I would suggest. Find a school near your house, near your neighborhood, near your city, where you can go and take an oral assessment. Usually, the schools usually offer this service for free because they want you to study there, you know. So I would recommend doing that. It's something you can do and it's usually for free, okay? Or you can save some money and pay for one private class and have an assessment test. You know, it's a good idea. Sometimes we can't invest every week, but maybe a class so that you can check what your level is. Hi, Alejandro, thanks for joining. So this is something you could do to know if you are an intermediate speaker or if you need to work on more basic things before you become an intermediate speaker, okay? Now, so here we go. The first suggestion. Gustavo, is this question for me, where I am from? Engenharia, I know you're asking about my private classes, and I can talk a little bit about that at the end, because I will be talking a little bit about my classes, not in the marketing sense, but more like as examples. I'm from São Paulo, from a small town in the state of São Paulo. I'm Brazilian, and I don't remember the other question, but I think one answers the other, right? So the first thing I would say is start paying attention to the small improvements, okay? When you become an intermediate speaker, the improvements will be small, all right? So if you don't pay attention to those improvements, you will never feel that you are improving, okay? So, and a practical example of that. For example, vocabulary. Vocabulary is something that should be different when you are an intermediate speaker. You should have more vocabulary. You should be using more phrasal verbs, okay? I will talk about phrasal verbs. That's actually the second suggestion, but the second and the first, they are very similar. So you need to observe what kind of improvements you are making. For example, last week I made a video about comparatives. Did you watch this video about comparatives? Did you leave your answer in the comments? I love to see your answers, guys. So if you did, good job. So I talked about comparatives. This is a basic subject. Okay, this is something we teach beginners, not early beginners, but we teach beginners about comparatives at some point, okay? Not in the beginning, but we teach them at some point. So if you are an intermediate speaker, you should not remember all the rules, but you should remember how to use them. And the most common mistakes students make is to use more with all the adjectives. More easy, more cheap, more good. No. So this is something that you have to start observing. Did you improve that? Are you starting to correct yourself when you make these mistakes? So this is an improvement. This is a real improvement, okay? I was just talking to a student of mine about that. He is a strong speaker now, much better than when he started. And, sounds. Sorry about that. So, and in the past, he used it to make those mistakes a lot. He used it more all the time with short adjectives. And now, oh, that's awesome, Jaime. Thanks. That's cool. He's not a teacher. I thought he was a teacher. So, he used it to make those mistakes a lot. And now, he's not making those mistakes as often. He remembers. He corrects himself. That's when we realize he's becoming a strong speaker. That doesn't mean you will not make any mistakes. That means you will correct yourself, you will remember, and you will make these mistakes less often, not as frequently as you use it to, okay? Hi, Young, thanks for joining. Okay, so this is paying attention to the improvements you are making. This is important. This is a big deal. And many students at intermediate level stop doing that because they feel that nothing is happening. But it is small, but it is happening. Okay? The second suggestion, which is very similar to the first, is the frequency you use expressions and phrasal verbs. Okay? at this level, you need to be using more expressions, more phrasal verbs, okay? I know many students who understand phrasal verbs, okay? You know what it means, but you don't use them. So this is time to start using phrasal verbs. I've made some videos about phrasal verbs here in the channel, and it's something that you have to, at the beginning, to force yourself, to remind yourself to use. Because you won't, it's not so natural as the simple verbs. That's the problem. The phrasal verbs, they don't come as naturally to us. We need to be constantly reminding ourselves to use them. Okay, so at an intermediate level, you should be using these phrasal verbs. Engenharia is asking me about dictionaries of phrasal verbs. As much as I love the dictionaries for phrasal verbs, I think that because they're very long, they have like 1,000 phrasal verbs, 500 phrasal verbs, it can be overwhelming. Okay, so this is the problem. I would suggest start with small lists. Okay, there are many lists on the internet. So start with a list of 10, 15. It doesn't have to be a very long list. I prefer my students to use 2, 3 phrasal verbs consistently than using no phrasal verbs at all and studying this long book of phrasal verbs. So I don't recommend the dictionaries per se because you can find the meanings on the internet. I definitely recommend learning by small lists and phrasal verbs that you could relate to things that you do. For example, use a phrasal verb and write an example of something that happened to you. That's how we learn, by making connections to things that happen to us. I do this all the time with my students, okay? So, as I was saying, your level of vocabulary needs to be better. That doesn't mean you are an intermediate speaker, but that means that if you are at this level, you need to start paying attention to the vocabulary you use, to the expressions you use, to the idioms you use, to the phrasal verbs you use. That makes a huge difference, okay? Now, the third suggestion I'm going to make, and some of you are even said that they don't like it very much, grammar. I will talk about pronunciation in a little bit, okay, Rosa? Grammar. So when you were in the beginning, you learned verb to be. You learned simple present, you learned past, you learned future, you learned present continuous, I'm doing, I'm going, I'm speaking. And when you want to level up, when you want to improve your level, you need to go back to grammar, okay? Now, I know that many people, well, not many, but some people are in favor of grammar, some people are against grammar. I believe that everything needs balance, and grammar needs to be in a routine, but in a balanced way, okay? So everything you learned at basic level is very basic, as the word already says. So when you get to intermediate, you need to review these grammar points, but when you review them, you will learn more information. Because when I teach my basic students about verbs, adjectives, I teach very basic things. When you get to intermediate, you have to learn more about the same subjects because there is more information. For example, let's just get one example. We learned about the simple, I will suggest a book for grammar, okay? Engenharia, one sec. So when you learn simple future, will, okay? You learn, oh, it's for future, you know. That's exactly the one I was gonna suggest for intermediate, okay? It's a very, very nice book. I will leave the link at the end of this video. I will leave a link in the descriptions for the grammar book that I would recommend, okay? But I will talk a little bit about this book because it's not just open and study. We have to be strategic about how we study grammar. Otherwise, it gets boring and meaningless with no purpose, okay? So you learn it will. But then after you get out of basic and you're getting more towards a pre-intermediate, intermediate level, you learn different ways to talk about the future, and you also learn that will is used in different situations, and the idea of future is much more complex. There are more different situations when you're making a promise, not necessarily just a plan for the future, but when you're making a promise to someone, you will use future, will, for example. So you learn more details. Okay, so that's why studying grammar is relevant, because you will learn additional information to complement what you already know. Okay, now many students they misunderstand when I tell them study grammar, because they think they will not improve their speaking. That is exactly why you should do it. Okay, Isaias is asking me if I speak any other language. I do speak a bit of Spanish. I must improve. I used to be really good at Spanish, but my vocabulary is poor. A bit of French, un peu, and yeah, that's it. Okay, that's it. I studied Italian a long time ago, but I stopped, so I don't remember much, like zero almost. Okay. So as I said, grammar is important. And then some of you suggested the book from Raymond Murphy. That's his name. The book it's a blue book, a blue cover, and it's for intermediate speakers. This is a great book, but if you only study this book, you will get so bored. You will get so tired and so frustrated that you will hate me, or you will hate yourself. So you need balance, okay? Grammar needs to be connected to speaking. So when I tell my students to study a specific grammar point, I am giving them a conversation where they can use that grammar point. So I never just tell my student, okay, study simple present and hey, good luck. No, we need to connect simple present to something you can use simple present with, okay? So if you are studying by yourself and you decide, okay, I want to study future. Okay, you can study all the exercises about future, but you need to connect them to a conversation subject. Okay, that's what I do when I'm studying by myself. That's when I do when I tell my students to study grammar. We connect, because they are with me, we do conversation exercises during the class, and I make them use those grammar points. So that's how you use grammar. If you just sit down and do the exercises, I hate to be to give you bad news, but that's not gonna help you much. You will do the exercises, you will correct, you will get a nice score, like get all the answers correct, but you won't use them. Okay, so connect to a subject. And if you are studying alone, I'm trying to get to my YouTube page. Yeah. If you're studying alone, that's hard. So you can practice your writing. Maybe you don't have someone to talk to, so you can write about the subject. Okay, that's a way too to study. So you're learning, making a future specifically to make plans. So you can write a short essay, a short paragraph, and talk about your plans. Okay, so that's a nice way to study and connect the subjects. You connect the grammar point to a real conversation subject. Okay, so that's what I would recommend. Okay, Adriana is saying, I have problems to use passive voice without thinking. Is passive voice important? Yes, it is important, but for specific conversations. Okay, so for example, when I teach passive voice to my students, I usually talk about inventions. Okay, we start thinking about all the important inventions around the world, and hey, question, who invented the airplane? Huh? The Wright brothers or Santos Dumont? Let me know here in the chat. Depending on where you are, you may have a different answer. I would love to hear that. Let me know here in the chat. So I like to use that to talk to my students. Okay, so that's definitely something I would recommend. Okay, now let's see here the next point. Number 4, suggestion number 4, intonation and pronunciation. Now, this is something that I myself start working with my students since the beginning, So if my student is a beginner, I will teach my student a little bit about pronunciation, a little bit about intonation, and I will give my student exercises for intonation, exercises for pronunciation. Now, what happens is that many students who reach intermediate ignore the pronunciation and intonation exercise. I don't know, it could be many reasons, okay? But one of the reasons I think is practicing intonation and pronunciation sound complicated, okay? It sounds complicated. Yes, I know. Engenharia. Oh my God, where are you from? If you're from Brazil, you should say that it sounds Dumont. Come on. Well, so as I was saying, many students feel that it's very complicated to study pronunciation and intonation. Those phonetic symbols, they sound so complex. And consequently, many of them ignore this exercise. Okay, and even I have students who are beginners and I give them the exercises. Sometimes they don't do it because they feel uncomfortable doing this exercise. Many times this exercise requires repetition of words, repetition of sounds. Sometimes it's just a sound. I send them the vowel sounds, the consonant sounds, and it is a bit tiring, a bit boring to do this exercise, repeating words, repeating phrases, checking out sounds, but it's important. Okay, Trump, good one. So as you get to intermediate, if you don't improve your pronunciation, if you don't improve your intonation, you are not an intermediate speaker, because the main goal of speaking a language is to be understood. If your intonation and pronunciation are not clear, I can't say you are an intermediate speaker because I can't understand you. Okay, so maybe you have the best grammar in the world. You really understand the grammar concept. You really write well. You can read very well. You can understand people very well. But if you don't have a clear intonation, a clear pronunciation, I would probably not say you are an intermediate speaker. If you did a test with me, if you did an assessment test with me and I couldn't understand you, I would probably say, hey, we need to go back a little bit because we need to work on your intonation and on your pronunciation. And this is something that students ignore. Many students take this exercise for granted. Okay, so this is something that you need to include in your routine if you want to get to an upper intermediate, a strong intermediate level, or an advanced level. Okay, and I'm getting towards tip number 5, suggestion number 5. So all of these, they need to be done together. It's a combination of these exercises that will help you get out of the intermediate level. That could take 6 months, that could take 1 year, that could take 2 years. It really depends on how much effort you put in these exercises, okay? The last subject, the last suggestion I would like to give is complex subjects. What's this? If you are an intermediate and you are stuck at intermediate, it's time to make your brain work harder. It's time to give your brain more challenges. And by giving you complex, difficult subjects, you are going to have to work hard. You know, this is something that I do a lot with my students. When they start, during the first classes, I give them a difficult subject just to see their reaction. And they're usually like, teacher, this is so difficult. I can't really do it. And as they continue the course and they start to be making a lot of improvement and progress, I remind them of those classes. And I say, remember when you couldn't do it? Look at you now. Now you are doing it. So that's what I suggest you to do. Okay? You need to prepare yourself for difficult situations. And when you get to intermediate, you are at an English comfort zone. You can talk about your weekend, you can talk about your likes and dislikes, you can talk a little bit about your work, a little bit about yourself, you can make plans and talk a little bit about the future, but that's it. Now you need to explore that and talk about more complex subjects. Global warming, science, politics, beauty, all kinds of subjects, okay? I'm not saying that you have to talk about subjects you don't like, all right? I think you need to be aligned with your interests. but it's time to explore different subjects, because by exploring different subjects, you will learn new expressions, as I was saying. You will learn new phrasal verbs. You will see phrasal verbs in context. You will see expressions in context. You will see grammar in context. You will see grammar structures in context being used. And that's how you go from intermediate to advanced. That's how you go from a pre-intermediate to a confident speaker. Confidence, you only build your confidence in the language if you challenge yourself. Okay, respecting your level, but you have to do that. So this is something that I always do with my students, because that's how you get to that level, by talking about things that makes you uncomfortable, because that's the way. Because it makes you uncomfortable because you don't have the vocabulary, or maybe you don't know how to use the structure you learned. Maybe you learned the structure, but you don't know how to use it in conversations. And these subjects will help you. Now, this last suggestion is a little bit difficult to implement because you need somebody else. You need people you can talk to in order to apply this last suggestion. It can be a friend, okay? It can be someone who speaks a little bit more English than you do. You could try private classes. I definitely recommend paying for private classes. I understand that it is expensive, it is an investment, but at some point, you need to start thinking about saving a little money to invest in classes, okay? Not now, maybe not now, okay? But I agree with you, Gilmar. Success happens out of your comfort zone. I totally agree. And to get out of intermediate level, you need to get out of your comfort zone and really do challenging exercises, learn challenging vocabulary that will get you out of this level, okay? But as I said, it's a combination of exercises, a combination of activities. These 5 suggestions I gave you will definitely get you there, but it's all about the time, okay? So as I was saying, the investment for private classes may not be something you can do now, but it could be something you could consider doing in the future, okay? So don't be frustrated or sad if you can't pay for that now. There are many ways to improve your English, and if you don't have the money to do this now, don't worry about it. Work to be able to do that, and maybe in 1 year, in 2 years, no problems, you will be able to do it. But by starting this preparation, of studying specific conversations, learning different subjects, studying specific grammar, reviewing grammar, but learning additional information, paying attention to your intonation and pronunciation by doing specific exercises, learning more about pronunciation, learning more about intonation, because that's how you are going to become a more complete speaker, a confident speaker. Okay, and by the time you have the money to maybe pay for classes, you will have all this work done. So it'll be easier for your teacher or for the course instructor to guide you, to help you improve even more. Okay, there are many things you can do alone, and you can find friends to help you with. As I always emphasize, you can definitely find people online who want to talk in English, who want to improve. Okay, Engenharia is asking me about good dictionaries. I like Oxford, the American version. I like to use Oxford, but I like Longman too. I use all of them. Sometimes I like to make comparisons. I like to compare the definitions from Oxford and Longman and see what they have to add. Okay, Adailson, thanks for joining. Classes, thanks for joining too. It's a pleasure to see you guys. Don't forget to watch the replay to see all the suggestions I gave. Okay, it was fun. So at the end of the days, guys, there are many things you can do to get from intermediate to advanced. Okay, it's not a secret recipe and you just follow the instructions and hey, cake is ready. No, unfortunately it's not. But there are things you can do that will help you become a more confident speaker. And you only become a confident speaker if you speak. Okay, only studying and writing and listening will help you tremendously, but at some point you have to start speaking, and most important, you have to listen to yourself. Don't be afraid to listen to your own voice, okay? When you practice intonation and pronunciation, it's important that you record yourself. So you're practicing pronunciation, you were doing some exercises, you watched the teacher, maybe you were watching a video on YouTube, Rachel's English, she's amazing, like she's one of the best pronunciation teachers I've seen here on YouTube. So maybe you were doing one of her exercises, so what can you do? As soon as you finish the video, you record yourself doing the exercise, and then you listen, and then you compare to the video. And that's how you get a better idea, not a perfect idea, but a better idea of how your English is sounding, okay, of how it sounds when you speak, because that is very important if you want to improve your pronunciation and intonation. As I told you guys, when I was at Harvard, I was taking a course, and one day we had this exercise, okay? Every class we had to prepare something to talk to our classmates about. And sometimes the teacher would ask the students to pair up, okay? And we would get together with another partner, we would sit together, and we would explain to each other what the subject was about. We couldn't show our writings or our notes, okay? We could only speak. We could only explain what we read about. And one day I was paired up with this classmate, and unfortunately his pronunciation and intonation were very difficult to understand, okay? I couldn't understand him. He had no rhythm, he had no intonation, he had no pronunciation. I panicked because the teacher was walking around the room and we couldn't show the paper. So I panicked. I looked at my friend, I said, "You give me the paper right now." And he was like, "No, we can't, the teacher." And I was like, no, right now, give me the paper. He gave me the paper. I looked at the subject. I was like, "Oh, that's what you were talking about?" Because it was not clear. So, and he was at the last level of the course, of the English course. So writing, grammar, listening, that doesn't mean anything if you can't express, if you can't pronounce the words, okay? He improved a lot by the end of the course. He was much better, but he still had a lot of work to do. That's why I insist on this exercise. Pronunciation and intonation are very important if you want to have a conversation with someone, okay? Guys, that is gonna be all for today, okay? I hope you enjoyed the suggestions I gave in this video, all right? I hope I was able to help you. I apologize for any background noise, or if you misunderstood me, post me a question in the comments, okay? I would love to see. I won't see the chat anymore, but once the video is finished, you can go back and post a comment. Let me know your opinion, what you think about this video, okay? Would be great. And sharing is caring, so if you liked the video, help me by sharing this video on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google+. It really helps me when you do that. Don't forget to leave the like as well, because it also helps me, okay? So I'm not wearing makeup today, that's why. All right, but I feel good actually. So guys, thanks for everything and have a nice weekend, okay? Thank you all. Bye-bye.